The reason I'm going to use this is it has a little bit of curves here. It also has some sharp edges in some areas that you have to cut out and shape around. So I thought it'd be a good example. I'm basically going to just put the design through here and on the edges. I'm not going to cover the whole thing, but it should give you a good example of how to do edging, you know, straight parts, flat areas as well. Just kind of a good example of how to do it on your own. What I'm using today is there's going to be a wrap cut fine filament edge cutting tape. That is to use straight lines instead of using a pair of scissors. It's really good to put on first and then you use an edge of a little thread to basically cut your material. It gives you a nice straight line or a curve, however you want to design it. This little edging tool I found pretty handy. Probably won't use it today, but I just keep it handy in case I do need it. This came with a little kit that I have that also has a squeegee with a felt tip, a rubber edge there, an X-Acto knife or a razor blade knife will work, and all that was from a kit online through Amazon. It's a vinyl wrap kit that you can use. I'll also be using a heat gun, but I won't use it for stretching. I'm going to try and do a cold wrap stretch instead of using heat. When you use heat and you stretch apart the material, it does basically take away the color and it kind of makes it look odd. You also run the risk of stretching it too much and ripping it or distorting any type of the material to where you don't need it. So I try and do it as cold as possible. And what that means is I'm not freezing or anything in here. It just means that I put it on room temperature instead of using heat to do it. At the end of it, I will hit it with just a little bit of heat with you. That way you see that it does need to adhere better. But basically these are all the tools I'm going to be using. Other than this cloth here, this is like a shop towel and it's good, it's lint free. I'll also be using this just basically normal cloth. I'm going to be putting isopropyl alcohol on here to clean everything with and make sure that there's no stains or anything like that or any type of lint that's going to be on there. I'll also be using a 2800 grit. There are some sharp edges on here, especially at the top. I'm going to trim that down just a little bit with the sandpaper just so it doesn't have a sharp edge or, you know, ragged edges causing the material to cut whenever we use it. I am going to try and wrap around this area so there is some on the back. Usually wrap lasts about 2 to 3 years and then you have to rewrap it. It's not a permanent thing. You can take this wrap. This is the 3M vinyl wrap. It's the lime green like I've got on my Can-Am Spyder. I also have a little piece here. You can see the back of it. It is a wrap film series 2080. And this is 3M. I prefer the 3M products because everything that I've used from 3M is always really good. Now, first thing to do is basically make sure that all of your area is clean, lint-free, dust-free or anything like that as well. Anything that would harm the materials you want to move out of the way. I am putting a towel down here just so you can see it, but normally I would not use a towel because that is a form of lint that can get on your material. I'm going to lay my other shop towel down and sand on top of that towel. Now I'm not trying to change the material or change the shape of it. I am just sanding to make sure that it is not going to be a sharp edge. As you can see, there's some of the plastic there on there. Hopefully you can see that. And again, this is just to get the rough edges so it doesn't cut my material when I'm using it. Alright, so I've given you a real quick idea. I'm going to go ahead and finish this up. I'm going to do all edges. Just give it a nice clean dry wipe there. Make sure all the dust and everything is off of here. Alright, so even though I'm not going to be covering the whole thing, I still like to clean all of the material that I'm using. If it is a wrap for a car and everything like that, even if I don't use the whole, like say we were doing the hood and I'm just putting a racing stripe or something down there, I still clean the whole hood just to make sure that nothing comes over and gets on your wrap whenever you're doing it. So you're gonna see me put rubbing alcohol on here, go all around the top part. If some of this goes out of camera view, I am very sorry. I have the camera in a stationary place. I don't have anybody to move it around or any type of equipment that follows me. So basically just bear with me on that part. I'll do my best to keep it in range for you. Now the next part we're going to do is take this fine filament cutting edge tape and always put a little piece there. I don't know if you'll be able to see it on the camera, but if you notice, there's a little, like it's a brown color to me, or like a yellowish color on through my eyes. On the camera, I don't know if it'll show up that way. It might show up as white, but that little tiny itty bitty strip at the top is what actually is used to cut the tape. You'll peel this loose and peel it away from the tape, and it creates a nice little thread, and that thread is what you use to cut the material. Now, thread does stick to the tape at first, so I'm trying my best to get it. Usually I use the razor knife to get it peeled off there. There we go. All right, and as you can see, it's actually peeled away from the tape. So that is what we're going to use to cut. So that is what we're going to use to cut the 3M wrap with. I want my line to be right through here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put, since this has the stickier side, this thick edge, I'm going to put towards this side, and then my thread will be on the closest side to where I'm cutting. Hope that makes sense to you. So whenever I put it, if you notice the thread, I'm going to turn it around, and now I'm just going to shape it. So I'm going to start, there's a little line in the curve. I know you can't see it on the camera, but I'm going to follow that little line right there and get me a nice edge. And that way it makes it a little bit easier to match on the other side as well. I'm going to press down. Now, once again, the sticky side of this is pointing this way. The thread that I'm going to use to cut with is on the edge that I'm going to cut. So I want from here over to be green and this side not. All right, when doing your wrap, it is a good idea to cut more than you actually need. So I'm not going to try and cut out this pattern exact to use as a shape. If you notice, this is kind of squared off. So basically, I'm going to eyeball it and see if you can see there. Again, I apologize if this doesn't show on camera. I'll find out whenever I'm doing my final part on it and editing. But basically, I'm letting it hang off here. There's the edge of that. Here's the edge of the other side. So I'm at least going to go an inch there. And if you look at the back here, we have, looks like half of it can be cut. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Yep. We are going to go ahead and cut it at the halfway mark. So now we are ready to start with the wrap. What I'm going to do is there's a backing here that separates from the wrap. I'm going to start somewhere in here and touch it and let it seal to that part, and then start stretching the wrap as well. So I start from, if I was to do this whole thing, I would start from right here and then work my way out. But right here is about my thickest piece and also the center of the piece. So I want to start here. That way it won't twist on me a whole lot. And it's basically the center of where I want to wrap, and it's a nice flat piece. So I can stick it there pretty good, and then we can continue with the rest of it. So again, I hope everything's viewable from here. There's two sides of this. One is the paper backing, then you have the wrap, and then you have a nice clear film on the other side. All right, so I'm peeling away from there. And as you see, this one has little lines in it. Hopefully, again, you can catch it on camera. So whenever you're stretching and wrapping, those are little places for the air to be released. Now, the bad part about this is I'm on a towel. Again, normally I would not do this on a towel, just to be on the safe side. So in looking, that is where I want it positioned at. Again, like I told you earlier, I'm stretching, not really stretching, but pressing it right there in the middle of my spot where I'm going to be working. This can be lifted up as many times as you need it to be. It's no issue whatsoever. So we're going to start here. Now, around the edges, I like to pull pretty tight Start giving it that shape. And the good part about this is, it looks like we're going to be able to wrap around the back side of it, which is what I was hoping for the best. And the reason I'm able to do that is I sanded down those edges, prevented any issues. A lot of people like to use heat around the edges. When you do, you end up causing some issues. You stretch the material too much and you end up giving yourself a, if this was a multicolored or a darker color, you would notice it on the film. It would actually change it. It might change the black to like a little bit of a light gray color because you're stretching it out and taking shape. This green's real nice because it doesn't change color too much whenever you're stretching. And I know it probably doesn't look like it on film, but I am applying pressure with my right hand and squeezing with my left. So I'm actually pulling down as I squeeze around the edges. And hopefully I'm giving you guys enough details. I'm trying not to bore you to death and put you to sleep. Down here is going to be the tricky part. So what we're going to do, we take our little razor knife and we're going to cut 2 parts right here. Now why I did that is because sometimes in your bends, you're not always able to have the material stretch around without causing bubbles and whatnot. Sometimes you just have to do what you have to do. And on this part, this is one of them. So I cut it right there, I'm gonna fold it in, squeeze it around. That little cut gave me just enough to make sure that everything looks good in here and give me just enough to give that shape. So I'm going to cut it the rest of the way down to the plastic. All right, so there we have a nice little edge on one side and an edge on the other.